48 communities and other ancestral authorities in Guatemala will demonstrate to demand the resignation of the Attorney General and other members of the Public Prosecutor's Office in the justice system. Also, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi arrived in Russia as he pays an official visit to the Eurasian nation until September 21st. An earthquake of magnitude 4.8 hit near the city of Florence in central Italy. Hello from the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba. This is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. The Cuban president, Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez, arrived in New York to participate in the high-level meeting of the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Upon his arrival in New York, the head of state held a meeting with a representative of the diplomatic mission to the United Nations. The president of the Caribbean nations said that Cuba will be there presenting the demands of the G77 plus China summit and those of its people. Díaz-Canel will attend the meeting as president pro tempore of the G77 to present the results of the recently concluded summit in Havana, which was considered highly productive and a success due to the number of participants on the high level of the agreements. The meeting was notable for the level of consensus that led to the adoption of a final declaration calling for a change in the unequal international financial order that limits the development of the countries of the South. A dozen Dominican organizations demonstrated on Saturday with a joint communique against the closure of the border with Haiti decreed by the government of the Dominican Republic. In view of this border closure action, the 12 organizations united to make known that they reject the warlike speeches and the aggressive measures of the Dominican government based on the claim that the Haitian irrigation canal on the Massacre River is a detour of the river, which constitutes a natural border between the two countries. According to the statement of the 12 organizations, the action contradicts the official documents of the Dominican government, including the opinions of the National Institute of Hydraulic Resources, published in 2021, and the bilateral declaration of May 27th of the same year. The document states that the closure and militarization of the border will harm the poorest communities on both sides of the border. And hundreds of citizens took to the streets and squares of different cities in Haiti to demand the resignation of Prime Minister Ariel Henry, who they told and hold responsible for the situation in the country. The mobilizations were called by the emerging party committed to development, led by the former Premier Claude Joseph. Several social and political organizations joined the peaceful day that took place massively in Port-au-Prince, the capital of the country, and was felt in other areas, with more modest demonstrations. The demonstrators criticized the Prime Minister's management of the unprecedented wave of violence, the border conflicts, and the promotion of foreign intervention. 48 communities and other ancestral authorities in Guatemala will demonstrate on Monday to demand the resignation of the Attorney General and other members of the Public Prosecutor's Office and the justice system. The municipal mayor's office explained in a statement that they will demand the resignation of Consuelo Porras, Rafael Curruchiche, and Freddy Orellana because they agree with the president-elect Bernardo Arévalo, who points them out for interfering with the democratic process in reference to the general elections 2023. The mobilization for democracy will arrive to Guatemala City, the capital of the country. Murders and massacres of social leaders and former FARC fighters in Colombia decreased during the first months of this year. This is the report elaborated by the Observatory of Human Rights of the Institute of Studies for Development and Peace in the past. The information supported by the National Protection Unit refers that there is a decrease of 22% in the murders of social leadership reference with respect to 2022. The same happens with the executions of former guerrillas that have decreased by 17%, while the massacres register a decrease of 18% when comparing the period with 2022. In the past, recognizes improvements in the situation but affirms that there is still much to do. The government of Bolivia rejected a memorandum sent by the United States, which accuses the Andean country of failing to comply with its obligations to combat drug trafficking. Washington has included Bolivia in the list of countries with the highest levels of production and transportation of narcotics, along with 20 other nations. The United States has urged the Bolivian government to implement measures to reduce the number of coca crops that exceeded the legal limits. Officials defined this act as political, assuring that the North American nation should focus on addressing the illicit drug consumption crisis in its territory, which affects at least 39 million people. The authorities described the document as unilateral for having a geopolitical intention that is far from the sovereignty treaties. And the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro Moros, has returned to his country after a successful tour of China and after participating in the G77 plus China summit held in Havana, Cuba. Maduro was welcomed with honors at the Simón Bolívar International Airport in Maiquetía. During the G77 summit held in Havana, Maduro met with several country leaders in order to strengthen diplomatic relations. Prior to that trip to Cuba, Maduro had made a week-long tour of China, where he signed 31 bilateral cooperation agreements in areas of common interest, such as science, technology, finance, agriculture, energy, among others. Let's take a short break. But remember, you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find the news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. On the Italian island of Lampedusa, residents protest the lack of assistance to the more than 10,000 migrants who have arrived in the island in the last 3 days. The tense situation worsens with the arrival of another 1,000 people in the early hours of Sunday morning. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni visit the zone. The Premier attempts to encourage a greater aid from the bloc. Meanwhile, locals call for protest over the lack of resources and discrimination against the asylum seekers, and humanitarian organizations are demanding an urgent meeting with von der Leyen. According to the Red Cross, there is currently only capacity to accommodate 1,500 asylum seekers. And for the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, irregular migration is a European challenge and needs a European response. She made this statement after her visit with the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni to the Italian island of Lampedusa. They both noted the migratory crisis due to the increase in the flow of immigrants. For her part, Meloni stressed the need for serious joint effort to deal with the illegal departures, since the consequences will overwhelm the border states and then all the others. The Italian Prime Minister announced that at next Monday's meeting of ministers, she will present for approval a law regulating the state on the island, as well as the repatriation of irregular asylum seekers.
I confirm that in tomorrow's Council of Ministers we will bring a rule to extend to the maximum allowed by the European rules the detention for repatriation purposes of those who arrive irregularly in Italy. We will give a mandate to the Ministry of Defense to take immediate action to build the structures that are necessary.
We have an obligation as part of the international community. We have fulfilled it in the past and we will do so today and in the future. But we will decide who comes to the European Union and under what circumstances, and not the smugglers and traffickers. To conclude by saying I came here to say to all of you, again, migration is a European challenge and it needs a European answer and solution. It is concrete actions that will bring change on the ground. It is only through solidarity and unity that we can achieve this, and you can count on the European Union.
The Pope Francis said on Sunday that migration will be a key issue during his trip to Marseilles next week for a conference on the Mediterranean region. As he spoke, Italian Premier Giorgia Meloni and the EU Commission President von der Leyen were visiting the Italian island of Lampedusa, looking at strategies to handle the huge number of migrants that continue to arrive there. Speaking from the window of the Apostolic Palace, the Pope Francis said that it is a difficult challenge, but it has to be faced together. He also said that we will only prosper if we build on fraternity, putting human dignity, people, and above all, those in need first. Lampedusa, which is closer to Africa than the Italian mainland, has been overwhelmed this week by thousands of people hoping to reach Europe from Tunisia, which has replaced Libya as the main base for migrant smuggling operations in the Mediterranean. In Germany, citizens protested against the country's pro-NATO policy. The demonstration took place in the city of Magdeburg, and it is the largest demonstration so far in 2023. Demonstrators gathered in several squares and streets demanding the resignation of the government and new elections in Germany. They also expressed their rejection of government policies supporting NATO, the supply of arms to Ukraine, and their dissatisfaction with the restriction of civil liberties. Summoned by the civil society alliance Solidarisches Magdeburg and the left-wing youth, the demonstrators indicated that the main objective is to oppose right-wing ideologies and the conspiracy narratives. And China's foreign minister Wang Yi arrives in Russia as he pays an official visit to the Eurasian nation until September 21st. The head of the Communist Party's Central Foreign Affairs Commission office has already met with his counterpart Sergei Lavrov. According to the Russian Foreign Ministry, during his stay, the head of the Chinese diplomacy will attend the 18th round of Russia-China Strategic Security consultations. They will also discuss issues related to the regional and global security situation, and the Chinese foreign minister is coming from a meeting held in Malta with the Secretary Anthony Blinken, where they also discussed the peace plan for Ukraine. Now we move on to other topics. The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov reiterated on Sunday that the United States is directing the armed conflict in Ukraine against Moscow. During an interview, the Russian Foreign Minister assured that Washington is waging a war against Russia, supplying arms, ammunition, and intelligence data to the Ukrainian forces. The Russian official said that the delivery of long-range missiles by the West to Kiev will not change the situation. Lavrov also denounced that Ukraine has been prepared for years to fight and inflict a strategic defeat on Russia, and that the United States seeks to influence public opinion with this conflict. The Russian government will respond to the increase of the military presence by the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, in the Arctic. Russian Ambassador for Special Missions Nikolai Korshunov commented on the actions that Moscow will carry out within the framework of its foreign policy concept of development strategy for the Arctic Ocean. Korshunov said that current political and military tensions are due to mistrust from NATO members and the position of the United States and its allies regarding the military operation in Ukraine. Moscow hopes to continue with dialogues aimed at increasing mutual trust in the area. In Russia, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un visited the Far Eastern Federal University, FEFU, in the city of Vladivostok on Sunday as part of his official visit, which concluded earlier in the day. During the tour of the university campus, the rector, Boris Korobets, informed the president about the development of a photonic radiation accelerator that will make it possible to look deep into matter and carry out studies to develop effective drugs, new materials, as well as complex chemical and physical processes. Korobets stressed the importance of having 3,500 international students from 89 countries, including 43 from the FEFU. The president spoke with North Korean students and took a photo with them. The North Korean leader also attended a marine mammal show at the Primorsky Aquarium and then boarded the train that took him to Russia on Tuesday, September 12th, and left the Primorsky region. And despite measures of economic aggression against Moscow, the United States has imported $944 million worth of fertilizers from Russia so far this year. According to Russian media, in 2023, the United States reached a new record in fertilizer imports from Russia, despite a drop in purchases of nearly 40% in July compared to the same month in 2022. According to this data, imports from Moscow are the second most important for supplying the U.S. agricultural market behind Canada. The United States and the European Union are advancing a policy of sanctions and reduction of imports from Moscow, reason why Washington keeps a 22% reduction of its fertilizer imports from Russia so far in 2023. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at TeleSUR English, and there you will be able to rewatch our interviews, the top stories, the special broadcastings, and more. Just hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. We have a final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back. The governments of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso signed a military alliance to fight terrorism and organized crime in the common space of the African region. The defensive military alliance was established in Bamako, the capital of Mali, and by the heads of the military forces of Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Mali, Colonel Assimi Goïta, and Niger, General Tiani. According to the official statement, the three governments pledged to fight terrorism in all of its manifestations, as well as organized crime in the common space of the alliance. All of this is part of the joint action plan to combat the actions of terrorist groups. In Niger, protests continue to demand the withdrawal of French troops as well as the nationalization of the companies under the power of that European nation. The demonstrators have been camping in front of the French air base on the outskirts of Niamey since September the 2nd to demand the withdrawal of the French forces. These citizens accuse Paris of exercising colonialist policies in Niger and of stealing uranium from this African country. They have also promised to occupy the main entrance of the center until their demands are met. On July 26, a group of Nigerian generals declared the dismissal of President Mohamed Bazoum for mismanagement, after which the military junta urged France to withdraw its forces from the country and gave an ultimatum of 48 hours to leave Niger. However, the French troops have not left the country. On Monday, an earthquake of magnitude 4.8 hit near the city of Florence in central Italy. The Italian Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology reported that quake was followed by several aftershocks at 3:10 local time, with its epicenter near the town of Morari, northeast of Florence. The governor of Tuscany, Eugenio Gianni, assured that the situation was not critical and did not cause any significant damage or injuries. He also said that they are checking for possible structural damage to the buildings. The United Nations estimated the death toll in Libya at 11,300 following the collapse of two dams in the city of Derna, while more than 11,000 others remain missing. According to the new balance submitted by the international organization, setting data provided by the Libyan Red Crescent, the emergency has also claimed at least 170 lives in other parts of the east of the country. Meanwhile, the number of the displaced people reached more than 40,000. It is expected that these figures, both the number of fatalities and the number of displaced people, will increase in the coming days and weeks. For the time being, search and rescue efforts continue, while aid continues to arrive from other countries. On Sunday, 50 emergency workers from the Russian emergency services started working in the Libyan city of Derna. The Russian Emergency Ministry reported that the Russian emergency workers will supervise local search teams and examine the most difficult areas, including basements of the severely damaged buildings. It has been nearly a week since heavy rains caused 2 dams to fail in the area, killing more than 11,000 people. Entire neighborhoods were destroyed and people were swept out to sea. The Libyan Red Crescent stated that more than 11,000 people are still missing. Emergency workers are continuing their efforts to find survivors and recover the bodies. In Canada, Tropical Storm Lee made landfall, leaving over 120,000 homes without power. Local authorities reported that the storm made landfall at 5 p.m. local time on Saturday on Long Island, on the west coast of New Scotland, where storm surges with heavy swells were reported, causing ocean water to cover coastal roads. More than 117,000 homes were without power in the area, another 18,000 in New Brunswick, and more than 1,000 in Prince Edward Island at around 10 p.m. local time. As a precaution, authorities ask residents to stay indoors and stay away from coastal areas. In other topics, Israeli forces in Palestine attacked Muslim worshippers at one of the main entrances to the Al-Aqsa Mosque in the occupied old city of Al-Quds. Israeli occupation soldiers beat 3 worshippers, including an elderly woman, near the Gate of Chains in Jerusalem. The violence occurred after Palestinian citizens complained to an Israeli settle for blowing a horn at the entrance of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Israeli occupation forces intensified their presence around the mosque to restrict the access of worshippers as part of the siege on the Muslim community. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.